Hey, Fortune Firm here. This is Zach Perry. Once again, very, very pleased that we have, for a second time, our guest today, Dolf De Roos. Thank you for being here. I introduced you in the last video, but if you didn't see the last video, Dolf De Roos, you probably already recognize him. You know his name if you're at all in the real estate industry. He has over 20 published books, New York Times bestseller. He had 27 published books. New York Times bestseller. 27 countries.
The numbers mix up.
Where
it doesn't
he's been
matter.
teaching. All these numbers are so high they get mixed together.
Yeah.
But you've worked with Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins, Donald Trump,
Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy. The list goes on. It's all good fun. Yeah,
yes. So we are very excited and very pleased that we can have Dolf De Roos with us here today, and we're going to pick his brain. If you missed the episode where we talked a little bit about his past and how he got into real estate, it's definitely worth a watch. This episode, I'm going to be asking him some questions, hopefully that you'll find very valuable about if you are looking to get into the real estate, or if you're already in there and you want to hear some tips from a pro who has been doing this since he was 17 years old and making it look easy. We're going to hear some expert level tips from Dolf today. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so first question. Let's say I am interested in real estate, never done it before, maybe I'm 17, maybe I'm 50, right? And I'm thinking, how do I get started? What advice would you give them?
Firstly, you're in the right area, because if there's one thing I've noticed is that there are all these schemes and systems and mechanisms for people to become fabulously wealthy, at least according to their promoters. Get into ostrich farming. No, it's kiwi fruit farming. No, it's this blend of shares, or it's whatever. And yet, in my observation, when people retire, when they hit 65, or these days maybe 75, and they retire, their biggest asset is not the stamp collection that their uncle told them, and it's going to be worth a lot of money, Sonny Jim. It's not that classic car that they renovated and said it's going to be worth $1 million. Their biggest asset, without exception, is their home. And you'll often hear them lament, oh my gosh, if only we'd bought a second home, the neighbor's home that came for sale a while back. Why didn't we buy that back in 1974 or whatever, 1993? It was 80,000. It's now 600,000. So on that basis, buy more real estate. Firstly, it's extraordinarily forgiving of mistakes because, a rising tide floats all boats. So no matter which part of the country, in a high growth area or not so, everyone who bought real estate, almost without exception, did really well. You can't say the same about people in the share market. If you bought Enron stock or Montgomery Ward or whatever, those companies just fell off the list. They often compare the S&P 500, which, let's face it, Zach, is a measure of the top 500 companies, with the real estate index, which is a measure of all properties on average. Imagine if they took the top 500 properties, how they'd perform. Apart from that, if you've got 100,000 cash and you do want to buy stocks or any other paper product, options, futures, certificates of deposits, you name it, treasury bills, you can buy exactly $100,000 worth. I know some people buy on margin, but it's a small proportion of investors, a small proportion of stocks, and if the value goes down 30%, they do a margin call. So you need 100,000 to buy 100,000 of stock. But that same 100,000 cash can buy you $1 million property. And if everything goes up by 10%, your stocks go from 100 to 110, you've made 10%, great. Your real estate will have gone from 1 million to 1.1 million, you've made 100%.
100% return.
Now I know it goes in reverse too, if everything comes down by 10%, 90,000, 900,000, you've wiped out your equity, but I'm not worried about that. I had my equity wiped out in the GFC, meaning a lot of my properties went to a value where they were much less than the mortgage I had. But as long as you're not forced to sell, it comes back around. Now it's way up. The long-term trend is for the steady increase in value. In America, it's 9% per annum. That's huge.
So first step, definitely get involved.
Absolutely.
Now, are there any markets right now or any types of houses, or is there a niche right now that's hot or that they might want to look into over another?
Yep, there are always niches that are hot. So we could label them. But even more important than that is look at a lot of deals, because you will always end up finding what I call an anomaly in the market. So it is difficult to beat the average with any other investment vehicle, but with real estate, it is so easy to beat the average. I'll give you an example. If there are 10 houses for sale, 9 are being sold through a real estate firm, the price is probably pitched at the right market level because they have a moral obligation and probably a contractual obligation to do their research and do comparable analyses and find out what the true value is. But if it's what we call a FSBO, or for sale by owner, sometimes these owners are arrogant and think this property is worth $1 million when it's only worth 400,000. Well, you're not going to buy that. But similarly, you'll often find an owner think, well, I paid 28,000 for it back in 1968. If I get 600,000 for it now, I am screwing the buyer. So I'm happy with 600, and everyone knows it's worth 1 million. Or it'll be sold cheaply because it's a divorce situation and half's going to my ex anyway, and we'll just sell it and get rid of it. Or they're in a hurry, or they don't know the value, or they're too stingy to engage the services of a real estate agent. I know the value. I've lived on the street for 28 years. What does that 22-year-old kid know about the value of my... No, I'm not going to pay him money for that. So they sell it at the wrong price. So look at a lot of properties. I have a rule which I call the 100-10-3-1 rule. You look at 100 properties in order to find 10 that are worthy of putting an offer in on, and put offers in on those 10, and you won't get 10 offers accepted. If all 10 of your offers were accepted, you're offering too much, right? So maybe only 3 offers get accepted. Can you buy 3 now? No, we have to fund them. What if you have the cash to buy them? If you can afford to buy 3 for cash, you should be buying more than 3. So we have to fund them. Maybe only 1 funding package works. So you've looked at 100 properties to buy 1. But if you do that, if you don't give up, because many people don't, it's a long answer, but the first weekend they look at 13, and the second weekend they look at 12, and they add them up and they say, that's 25, I'm a quarter of the way there. But the next weekend there's the big football game on, you've got to watch that or your friends will be disappointed. And the weekend after that, Cousin Mary's getting married, you can't no-show at the wedding. And the weekend after that it's raining, and Dolf never said anything about looking in the rain, so I'm not looking. And then the weekend after he said, it doesn't work, this 100-10-3-1 rule, it's nonsense. And you've only looked at 25. Persevere, and the rewards will be huge.
So how do you find the properties that don't have realtors? They're not in the system. Where are you looking?
So when you visit your dentist and you're sitting there with your mouth open and say, what have you been up to lately? Instead of saying, well, I saw my cousin the other day and I played balls, beach dogs, whatever, played with the ball with my dog at the beach. We don't have beaches in Arizona, so I can't say that. Instead of that, say, you know what, I'm looking at real estate. In fact, if you come across a crazy deal, one with a twist, let me know. And it's not as if the dentist will call you the next day, but if you tell enough people like that, sure enough, 3 months later, hey, you still interested in properties? My elderly neighbor just passed away, and the son came in from Michigan, and they don't know what it's worth, and they just want to get rid of it. Awesome. It'll happen.
Yes. And
take a different route to work every day. People have become creatures of habit.
Signs on
and look for the sign. Or there may not be a sign. The grass is long and there are weeds everywhere and there's paper trash that's blown.
Different kind of signs.
A different kind of sign. And then investigate who owns it. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Very good. So are there any red flags that you would caution would-be real estate investors to look out for?
Oh gosh, there are so many red flags. It's hard to delve into them a bit. You've got to make sure that the person purporting to sell a property is in actual fact the owner.
Actually the owner.
Many people are being caught out that way.
So you got to be wary of scams.
Got to be wary of scams, yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes it could be honest mistakes that they don't know something. Once I bought a property and I had literally a busload of Australian investors with me, and I was showing them around, and the neighbor leaned over and says, hey, does one of you people own this property? And I said, maybe. Why? He said, well, I own 2 feet on your side of the fence. And I said, well, that doesn't sound right, or else the fence wouldn't be where it is. He said, no, the neighbors didn't pay their property taxes one year. It was going to go into foreclosure, and I offered to pay their property taxes if I got 2 feet. And so it's on the title. Here's my attorney's card. Call him. So I called him, and he was right.
Wow.
Now, it should have been picked up at escrow, but these are you have to be wide awake.
Okay.
But I love that. If it's just something where you make a decision on a whim, let's buy this stock or that thing, and then you forget about it, you're not involved in it. I love that you live by your wits. I can find a deal that we both drove down that street and saw. You might see one. You see the grass and investigate it. And I saw it, but I was too focused on who was singing on the radio or who I was going to party with that night that I didn't even notice it.
Wow. So any last bits of wisdom you want to share with our viewers? Anything, maybe you have something coming up you want to tell them about, or one last bit of anything?
You've got to live with passion. If you're out there thinking the world owes you something, it doesn't. Life is what you make of it. Or as a great mathematician, Tom Lehrer, said, life is like a sewer. What you get out of it depends on what you put into it. And that's a bit more graphic perhaps than I intended, but it is. You've got to decide. You've got to wake up every morning and say, is today going to be a great day or a mediocre day? Because honestly, what you experience depends on what you put out there. Many people think our eyeballs are lenses that get and receive light waves from what's out there and it's put into our brain and interpreted. It's actually the other way around. Our eyeballs are projectors, and what we think is what gets projected out there. That's why two people can experience the exact same thing, and one says, what a great experience, and the other one says, how mean everyone was. And it's a reflection of them and their own thinking. So if you have enough not good things happen to you all the time, start doing a bit of internal thinking about what you're putting out there from your brain through your projectors.
That is great advice. And Dolf, thank you so much for joining us. It has really been a pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure our audience is really excited that they get to see and hear from the great Dolf De Roos.
Well, it's my pleasure, and if I may finish with this,
sure.
May the fortune be with you always.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you.